Nigeria Center for Disease Control reports 300 new coronavirus infections in the country on Sunday. 6 Nigerians convicted, a federal government official indicted in the United Arab Emirates for wiring funds to Boko Haram. In international news, global COVID-19 cases surged past 50 million, 10 million in the US alone. And in sport, Nigeria Football Federation to get 1.2 billion naira for 2021 fiscal year.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Nigeria's COVID-19 cases have increased to nearly 64,000 on Sunday as the Nigeria Center for Disease Control confirms 300 new cases and CDC credits the nation with 0 COVID-19 deaths. It also reports 26 patients had recovered and have been discharged from various isolation centers across the country. Lagos, the country's epicenter, recorded most of the new cases, posting 255 infections. The Federal Capital Territories confirmed 27, and the rest of the cases were shared by Oyo, Kaduna, Ondo, and Kano. 1,154 deaths have been recorded so far in the country as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Nearly 6,000 patients have recovered. The Muslim rights concern, MURIC, has advised Nigerian Muslims to shun any invitation to join fresh protests in the country. In a statement on Monday, MURIC's director, Professor Ishaq Akitola, said the group's attention has been drawn to some rumblings that new demonstrations are being planned. Akitola said Muslims should remember what he called the very bitter experience of the EndSARS protest. He said those events had pushed the country to the edge of the precipice. The MURIC intellectual assailed the last protest as having been hijacked by those he described as disgruntled politicians, religious bigots, and ethnic jingoists. He said there is indisputable evidence showing that funds for the protest were provided by people who lack integrity and whose sources of income lack credibility, end quote. Professor Akitola further said, quote, the glorious Quran commands Muslims to join hands in righteous deeds, not for aggression and destruction, end quote. He said this is a clear injunction directed at Muslims and that this is enough for them to stay clear of any new protests. 6 Nigerians have been convicted in an Abu Dhabi Federal Court of Appeal in the United Arab Emirates. The offense, alleged funding of Boko Haram. The 6 had lost an earlier appeal at a lower court. 2 of the men, Surajo Abubakar Muhammad and Saleh Yusuf Adamu, back to life sentences. The other 4, Ibrahim Ali Al-Hazan, Abdurrahman Ado Musa, Bashir Ali Yusuf and Muhammad Ibrahim Isa, were each sentenced to 10 years in prison. They are shown in court documents to have allegedly been involved in $782,000 cash transfers to Boko Haram, an act that contravened the country's anti-terrorism law. The UAE National Security Bureau said its investigation had confirmed the involvement of the 6 and their membership in Boko Haram. Court papers showed most of the transactions were done by 2 undercover Boko Haram agents in Nigeria, one of whom is said to be Alhaji Ashiru, who was described as a Nigerian government official. The indictment also showed Ashiru had funneled misappropriated public funds to the terrorists. Families of the convicts say their relatives had been framed. They say their Buri Bishan businesses in the UAE was legitimate. 5 months ago, when diaspora remittances to Nigeria hit $25 billion, President Muhammadu Buhari had called on Nigerians in the diaspora to be active in the nation's economic recovery. Now, many Nigerian families report they are being sustained by diaspora remittances. Correspondent Kelechi Mekalam has the story.
Gabriel Ape is an event planner in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Business has been slow since the coronavirus pandemic hit his industry. With restrictions on social events and mass gatherings, Appa's income has reduced drastically. He's been coping with the fallout caused by the pandemic through funds from his friend who lives and works abroad.
My friend stays in Malawi. In fact, he has been of help to me of recent, most especially in this COVID-19 season. He has sent so much support to me and my family. At least I've received funds over 10 times in the past 8 months from him. Some funds I received for my family health care, some for my children's school fees, maybe they resume from school, and some for his building that is currently going on.
Nigeria is among countries with the highest diaspora remittance, coming closely after China and India. The West African giant has recorded about 210% increase in migrant funds in the last decade, from $3 billion to $17.5 billion. The country's over 10 million legal migrants who live and work in various parts of the world are responsible for this growth. PricewaterhouseCoopers estimates that the nation's direct migrant remittances could grow to $34.8 billion by 2023, and experts say this would help boost the foreign reserves and reduce inflation.
If you look at it in Naira value, we actually have about almost 10 trillion Naira. You understand? That is the value of the Naira that is coming from that diaspora that we are talking about. So it's very, very important because one is going to strengthen the value of Naira compared to dollar. That is number one. Number two is going to actually make our foreign reserve, to grow. You understand? It's going to build our foreign reserve so that we see a very buffer foreign reserve. Number three is going to increase the viability of the dollar that we want to see in Nigeria, because the shortage of dollar actually constrain our importers.
The World Bank had projected a 20% drop in diaspora remittances to low-income nations due to the pandemic. But the indices of growth recorded presents an alternate source to boost the nation's foreign earnings, 90% of which comes from crude oil. But economic watchers believe that diaspora remittances could significantly increase the country's financial source and inflow.
Many VIPs and organizations in the country are losing their police escorts in accordance with a withdrawal order by the Inspector General of Police. Some of the affected include former Secretary to the Federal Government of Nigeria, Babachir Lawal, several lawmakers, former ministers, including former Minister of State for Aviation, Femi Fani-Kayode, and others. This move is considered part of the ongoing police reform that has been prompted by the NSAS protest. The IGP's directive was contained in a letter to all Zonal Assistant Inspector Generals and all State Commissioner of Police on Wednesday last week. The list of 60 names also includes Yuguda Bashir, Think Nigeria First Initiative, Boniface Ajayi, Suleiman Idris, MD Somerset, and Uche Chukwu.
Coming up, African stories. Ethiopia hit by new wave of locust infestations. And later, international news. Global COVID-19 cases surged past 50 million, 10 million in the US alone.
You are watching ANN.
it out.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Africa is battling the coronavirus pandemic head-on as many countries strive to find effective treatment for the disease. South Africa's Aspen Pharmacare is to begin producing Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine. Correspondent Angelo Coppola has the details.
Johnson & Johnson plan to produce 1 billion doses of the single-dose vaccine once the official go-ahead has been given by various international regulators. Aspen will take a leading role in meeting that ambitious target.
We are looking to manufacture around 300 million doses out of our Port Elizabeth facility. And this is quite a significant development, I think, for both Aspen and South Africa, in that Aspen and South Africa will be playing a leading role in hopefully providing what is now required to be a global solution.
Aspen's agreement with Johnson & Johnson will enable it to use its spare manufacturing capacity at its Port Elizabeth operations hub. The firm recently invested $200 million to upgrade its facility there.
It's that particular investment that has now allowed us to move into vaccine manufacturing as well. And would turn Port Elizabeth, through this Aspen facility, would turn PE into a leading global manufacturing hub for anesthetics. So Port Elizabeth won't only be supplying vaccines, it will also supply anesthetics to the world.
The South African president has been on an investment-seeking drive over the last 2 years. Aspen was one of the first businesses to take up that offer and reinvest in the country.
There is no way that we cannot welcome any show of confidence in the capabilities of our companies to make a contribution in the fight against this terrible pandemic called COVID-19.
One of the key concerns facing many African countries is affordable and easy access to any successful vaccine.
J&J have indicated that they will make half of that, 50% of the billion, available for developing and least developed markets. South Africa naturally fits in the developing category. So I think it's an immense positive that Aspen is producing the product here in South Africa.
While the world waits for the results of those vaccine trials, it's now important that the production and distribution of the vaccines is equitable and everybody on the continent gets an opportunity to take them.
Ethiopia has had its fair share of locust invasions, but it appears the locusts don't yet have enough of the country, where a new wave of infestation is posing to ravage the country. Correspondent Koleta Wanjohi has that story.
Farmers in parts of the country are reeling from losses due to the expansive desert locust infestation. 5 regions of the country are greatly affected.
The damage caused by the first batch of swarms was not as bad, but the eggs that the swarm laid are what hatched now and are causing major damage on crops and grazing land. Secondly, the animals also get sick if they eat whatever is left from the locusts. This is the crisis we are in now.
The UN Food and Agriculture Organization says over 200,000 hectares of land in parts of the country have been damaged by the pests since January.
Between the 2nd and the 8th of October, 2 planes unfortunately gone down. One of the FAO plane had some mechanical problem. Quickly, we addressed the situation. Today, FAO has brought 4 spraying, as we speak today, FAO has 4 spraying aircraft. Government has 3 additional, and that is in addition to the survey aircraft.
The Desert Locust Control Organization of Eastern Africa that serves 9 countries says Ethiopia and Somalia are the most affected in the region. It says the biggest challenge in control is old equipment and uncontrolled breeding grounds. Yemen is one of the major breeding grounds of the pests. Ongoing chaos and conflict in the country, where most of the swarms have originated, have made spraying of pesticides by aeroplanes at the sources very difficult. UN Food and Agriculture Organization warns that if the invasion in Ethiopia is not fully controlled, neighboring Kenya will be hit by a second wave.
The second stage of Egypt's parliamentary elections took place on Saturday as more than 60 million eligible voters headed to the polls. The election is to pick 568 of the 596 lawmakers in the lower house. Correspondent Adi El-Marouki sheds more light on the story.
Loud music and flashy decorations at every polling station. Egypt is organizing a flashy parliament election to attract more voters.
The party has ordered all members of the Mustaqbal Watan party to intensify the efforts in their districts. We had to make more tours, reach out to the people to create more awareness so they would vote. This happened across the country. It's why turnout today appears to be picking up more than last time.
Layla Abdulrahim was resting a bit after her vote. It was a kind of a hassle for the 79-year-old Egyptian to come here. She believes casting her ballot is a duty she cannot skip.
I've never missed any election for Egypt. It's a dogma that I have to select whom will rule me for the coming years. And I trust the government and I trust my judgment. That's it. Although I am so tired today, but I think the last parliament did a good job, but not the one I was looking for. Hoping that this one will do a better job.
Layla wasn't the only one who crossed over the barrier of age to join the election. The age category of those voting during the early hours of the polls appeared to tip towards the higher figures of the age spectrum. Egypt is witnessing a fierce parliament race over 568 seats, divided equally into two phases.
After the 28% turnout in the first phase of the parliament elections, it appears that political parties and everyone engaged in these elections are willing to do whatever it takes to boost these figures.
When we return, international news. Global COVID-19 cases surged past 50 million, 10 million in the US alone. And in sport, Nigeria Football Federation to get 1.2 billion naira for 2021 fiscal year.
You are watching ANN. Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, African News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte has announced the Netherlands will return to a partial lockdown on Wednesday as battles to control the coronavirus in one of Europe's major hotspots. Rutte says public gatherings of more than 4 persons would be prohibited and even alcohol sales would also be banned. Correspondent Stefan de Vares has the story.
This is Museum Square. With Amsterdam's 4 most important museums, it's one of the major tourist attractions of the Netherlands. Usually this place is packed with people, but since Thursday the doors of all cultural institutions in the country are closed, making local and foreign visitors a rare sight.
One of the sites affected by the new partial lockdown is the former home of Rembrandt. The 17th century house where the world-renowned artist worked and lived has been a museum for over a century. The new closure is another blow for this small museum.
Last year was the Rembrandt year, of course, a fantastic year, and we welcomed 280,000 visitors. This year, if we're lucky, we'll end up with 75,000. So it's quite a problem. And of course, first of all, financially, for the Rembrandt House, for the Rijksmuseum, for the Van Gogh Museum, for a lot of museums. We're looking at huge losses this year.
By closing entertainment venues, the Dutch government is discouraging people from going out, wanting them to stay at home instead. But it makes any long-term planning for museums extremely difficult.
Well, there's a lot of uncertainty, so we don't know if this is the last lockdown. There may be another one in the spring. We're hopeful that the summer months, summer of 2021, will be a lot better. Here at the Rembrandt House, we're expecting to return to normal visitor numbers in 2024.
However, some say the pandemic also offers attractions a chance to rethink tourism.
You know, on the positive side, it does make it quicker, faster, into a more sustainable form of tourism, into a more sustainable business model for the cultural sector. So it's not all bad news. It also offers a lot of opportunities.
Getting a COVID-19 test could soon be as easy as breathing into a tube. A startup in Singapore has developed a new screening tool that can analyze people's breath to determine within a minute whether they're infected with coronavirus. Correspondent Mira Liu reports the company hopes to get an approval for commercialization by early next year.
A Singapore startup has developed a test which can detect COVID-19 by analyzing a person's breath, and it only takes a minute to give the result. The test has been developed by Breathonics, a spin-off company of the National University of Singapore, and they claim that it can even detect early-stage or asymptomatic cases.
If your body has certain disease, some biochemical pathway will change, and that will be reflected in the concentration of the breath molecules. For COVID-19, you have infection in your lung, and that will change the metabolism pathway. So some concentration of the molecule will change.
Unlike the PCR test, which is being used globally for COVID-19 diagnosis, the breath test is painless, non-invasive, and less time-consuming. A person is asked to exhale into a disposable tube. A mass spectrometer breaks down the breath into different molecules, which are analyzed by a computer to check for COVID-19 markers. Breathonics says that the speed and ease of testing could make their device an excellent first-level screening tool and reduce the strain on PCR tests.
Our machine will mainly be deployed at the high-traffic scenarios like the airport, the shopping malls, conventional centers, the train stations, the border checkpoints, etc. Temperature screening actually cannot identify early-stage COVID-19 patients, and some are just asymptomatic. For our test, it can be used at similar situation of temperature screening.
However, we won't see this machine deployed this year. The company recently concluded its first clinical trial with Singapore's National Centre for Infectious Diseases, where it saw more than 90% accuracy in 180 patients. It is now working with the medical authorities to expand the trial and hopes to get regulatory approval for commercialization by the first quarter of next year. The screening tools such as the antigen and the breath test will complement the PCR swab test, which is still considered the gold standard for COVID diagnosis. The success of rapid testing, though, will be crucial as Singapore gradually opens its borders and slowly resumes more economic activities.
The United States has become the first nation worldwide to surpass the 10 million COVID-19 infections mark as global record hits 50 million on Tuesday. The United States has reported at least 1 million cases in the past 10 days, the highest rate of infection since the nation reported its first coronavirus case in Washington state. More than 237,000 Americans have died of COVID-19 since the virus first emerged in China late last year. Data from Johns Hopkins University reveal more than 1.25 million persons have now died from the virus. Reuters also reports a second wave of the virus has accounted for a quarter of all cases. Europe, with more than 12.5 million cases and 305,000 deaths, is again a hotspot after being the first epicenter of the pandemic earlier this year. The American states of North and South Dakota have the highest rates of death per capita. Portugal is to bring in a curfew across most of the country from Monday. Switzerland is deploying 200 army reservists to its hospitals to help with growing numbers of admissions. France recorded 38,619 new cases on Sunday. In another development, Chairman and Chief Executive of drug company Pfizer, Albert Bourla, says an interim analysis reveals that a front-runner coronavirus vaccine it has developed was more than 90% effective at protecting people. Bourla says no serious safety concerns were observed in the trial and that it would apply for emergency use authorization to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Up next, sports. NFF to get 1.2 billion naira for 2021 fiscal year. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, Nigeria Football Federation is expected to get more than 1 billion naira from the Ministry of Youth and Sports Development for the 2021 fiscal year. The NFF budget constitutes about 2/3 of the total budget for the Sports Ministry. Liverpool defender Trent Alexander-Arnold will miss England's upcoming UEFA Nations League games after picking up an injury late in his team's 1-1 draw at Manchester City on Sunday. Manager Jurgen Klopp confirmed the right back came down with a calf injury midway through the second half. England face Ireland on Thursday before playing UEFA Nations League, a Group 2 games against Belgium and Iceland next week. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Have a pleasant evening.